So what's been going on, fellas? Really? I know, man. I know. Yeah, bro. I know. Don't, y'all. Every time I come over here and talk to you guys, you start arguing. Stop. All right, guys. Today we are going to talk about the differences between the U.S. bit key style locks and European bit key style locks. Now, these were sent to us by our good friends over in the UK, Daryl and Carol. I'll put a link in the video where I did the unboxing of that. In the meantime, I had put these back in the box, and I was going to do future videos. This is one of them. So while I've got these all laid out, I want to go over the differences between US bit key and European style bit key. So here we go. Okay, so the biggest difference is, to my knowledge, they still use these overseas. These are common, not like US style. These were all used from like the 1930s to like the 1960s. By the 1960s, they started phasing out and going into the regular style holes. And it was still very uncommon in the 60s to see these because there were, different construction methods and different mounting methods. And so these were pretty much phased out. We see a lot of the US based bit key locks on the older houses that were built between like the 20s and 50s and 60s. And this group right here is the style that you see mainly on the inside doors for like bathrooms, bedrooms, even closets had bit key locks. And almost always when the houses were built, they were all ordered to the same key. We're going to go over the difference in the keys. I've got them laid out here. Bit keys, I'll go over that real quick. There's bit barrel keys. A lot of people call these skeleton keys. Don't take offense, guys. You'll see that Jimbo over here has a example of a barrel key, and I would bring it closer to the camera, but he gets offended when I take that key away from him. That is the hollow key. You've seen several of my videos where I do desk locks with that hollow style key. However, bit keys have this bit or blade part and a post that's sticking off the end. And that post goes through all the way through the lock and sticks out the other side a little bit. Of course, on some doors you would use the key on both sides, and that kind of stabilizes the key in the lock. Now, I know a lot of you are familiar with all these types of locks, so this is just for those who are not as familiar. There are different quote skeleton keys, and there are some common ones that are sold. You can get these at hardware stores. You can buy these from locksmiths, of course. We have them, we sell them. I'm going to zoom this camera down a little bit so that we can see them. And the biggest common denominator with both interior and exterior, which I'm going to briefly go over, is that they are all one lever locks. When I say one lever lock, that means that there is only one little mechanism in there to keep the bolt from going out. One little flat piece of metal, which we will look at in a second. And very commonly, one of the two of these keys would fit those, which is probably where the whole misnomer or the skeleton key came from, because even though they have one lever, a lot of them have what's called this warding cut into the keyhole, and it can be on this side, it can be on that side, and then when you open it up, there can also be little projections on the inside. So number one, if you see a key that's cut specifically for that, you see how it's cut in the edge there, that is designed to pass that projection. And the reason why these can go in is because they are so thin, they just kind of go past it. They may have to angle a little bit, but they still will go past it. So when we put this in, got to be careful. Some of these will spring apart on you like this one just did. Now, another common thing about the US, see when you turn that part of the key, it goes up into the bolt, lifts up this and throws it past Now, if the key is not cut correctly, it may only throw it halfway and it will get hung up in sort of a halfway position. This is why we always tell people in the US, if you buy one of these keys, to try it with the door open, because if it's caught in this halfway position, you will run into the problem of it getting stuck. You won't be able to turn it either which way. So definitely always try one of these keys with the door open. A big security caution. I'll put up a big flashy thing here. Security, always try your bit keys if you've never used them on your house before with the door open. But if we take the bolt out, we can see what's called the lever, and it's spring loaded. That's just a flat piece of spring steel pressing down on it, so when you lift up, it lets it go past this little notch in the bolt. So that is really pretty much it for the US style. If you go through and you open some other ones, you'll have a different layout. Possibly, most likely, a different layout's going to occur in the area where the knob goes through and pulls it back. And if we look here, we see the lever's on this side, the other one, the bolt, was on the inside, so it could be on either side. And it's still only one lever, so this same key, as long as it goes through the keyhole and lifts it up and throws the bolt, it will usually work. So this particular one is a replacement, and while it looks like it has two levers in there, when we pull this front lever off, we will see, oh wait, let's take the spring tension off first. We will see what looks like a lever, but it's actually just kind of a spacer plate. Now, there are different ones. Some of these spacer plates just have a slit going across. We'll look at it over here. But this one is wide enough so that it just kind of floats. So you could use a key that has a cutout in the middle of it. Like, we'll borrow one of our Union keys as an example, but see, if this was fixed plate instead of it being wide open, that deep cutout would allow you to bypass it. However, since it's so wide like that, that's a spam call, so I'm not going to answer it. However, when you add the actual lever to it, that's where you have to have the right key cut for it. However, again, if we take our common key, we will see that it lifts it up, lifts both levers up, and throws it. Now, this one, this is an example of the blade not being long enough. While it does throw it, it does not throw it far enough. And if we hold the blade up and look down there, I was afraid I was going to do that. It is just a little bit too short to properly do what it's supposed to do. So that is what you have to be very cautious of. So let's go ahead and move on over to the larger ones. I will note before we move on from the smaller ones, these are the common trims. Oh no, sorry about that. These are the common trims that you would see in the US during the day. That's one of the fancier trims. Sometimes you would just see the oval with the doorknob and a key plate like that. Almost always oval. If we come back over here, they had the bigger trims on them. This is an example of this dual key. It's not this one does not match this lock, but you get the ID dual key style and regular. However, the only difference in the two really is the size. You have a much bigger frame. And these were commonly on front doors of houses that were built in like the 30s and stuff. And if you open it up, you do have some fairly complicated mechanisms for unlocking and locking the latch, and unlocking and locking the deadbolt as in the dual key. However, if we grab one of our example, quote, skeleton keys from over here, we will see it does not work, and it seems, again, just like the other one, to have three levers, when actually it's, as I was talking about earlier, in the other one, instead of it being wide open, this one has to be cut, because the key will definitely have to bypass, like this deep cut right here, it will have to bypass that to be able to throw the bolt. So in this example of a lock, you would literally have to, if I took this common key, oops, get back on there, and cut a slit down the middle of it, just right directly in the middle. That would allow it to throw the single lever up and bypass that spacer or lever, if you want to call it that. And again, there was no common standard. This one looks fancy, but again, it is still single lever only. Even when we open our dual key up, while it is more complicated with extra parts and backup springs and etc. to make it all work, each one is still only single lever and a bolt. So that is that, which is why we always encourage people that have these on their houses, still on their old houses, to at least have a deadbolt installed above it. And that brings us to the European side. There is huge differences here, so let's go take a look at it. Okay, now he did say that some of these were from different areas around him, and some of them obviously have been taken off of the house. I've already taken all the screws out here. But the one big difference, of course, is if we take every single key that's out here and we look at them, well, almost every key, here we go. Compare it to the US. We can see the huge difference. While this works most locks, these will not all work other locks. And I didn't talk about it over there, but there is the post diameter. Some of them are smaller, some of them are bigger over here with the old US style. But for the most part, those little, quote, skeleton keys would work on. All right, I shouldn't have done this. And this goes here, and this goes to this one, and this goes over here. So I'm gonna take these three apart. This is a union, and it is marked, I'm not sure what, but if I was a betting man, this is a 3 lever. You got 1, 2, 3. The front and back probably operate the deadbolt, but let's take a look. All right, they've got these spacers in there, so these can be converted to have a spring latch as well. But this is strictly the deadbolt only version, I'm assuming. And if we put our key in, I had trouble with this a minute ago when I was taking it apart. I don't know, this is kind of reminds me of a safe, like a safe combination lock. Like it will not, I can't get the key to work unless I have this cover on, but none of these are detents like you would actually find on a safe lock. Now I know I've got a lot of overseas followers, so pardon me for anything that I say incorrect about this. I'm a goofy Southern American locksmith that is playing with these for the first time. I'm going to pull this lever off here, and these are a little gooey, so he has definitely taken them off of doors before, but these are standard levers like you'd come to expect. This one has a spacer, and that appears to be plastic. Yep, that's plastic, a plastic spacer. And then goes the next one. This is very, very common of safe locks here in the US. This is the only, or safe deposit box locks. That's the only way we really have to correlate between the two. Any locksmith in the US who has worked on safe deposit box locks is like, oh yeah, that's a safe deposit box lock. This is I pronounced this wrong in the first video, and I know everybody's gonna cringe, so leggy. Leggy is what the US would call it, but it's probably leger or leger. So the big difference that I did notice in these is some of these do not have a shield. And when I say a shield, I mean a rotating shield right here that protects against direct attacks. As in the US locks, if we bring a US lock over here, there is no protector shield. And literally you could probably come in here with almost a flathead screwdriver, of course with the door. Yeah, you wouldn't be able to do this, but with it in your hand, you'd literally be able to make this bolt flip out. On some of these, they have it. This one does not have a shield, so this is very, probably in overseas mine, this would be a lower security version. And this one, I couldn't really decide how many levers this had. I mean, it could be, it's really wide right there. So 1, 2, 3 is what you would think, but it's actually 5 according to the faceplate for this is Leger 5 lever. Leger. So I want to pop this one open because it does have that shroud that protects against physical attacks. Now I did notice these are fairly okay when you open them. It only is a problem when you have the actual spring latch integrated to it. So the levers are way more complicated on these. And if we count the springs, we can see 5 springs in there. I'm not going to take this all the way apart just for sake of time. But we see the bolt is on the tip. So in this case, as with almost all keys, the bolt's going to be thrown by the front and back. So those are always going to be equal. And most of the time the levers are in the middle. And that is because the key has to come in from either side. So when we put this key in from this side, we see that shield. It picks up the shield with a little notch right there. Let's see if we can get let's see if we can get some better lighting for this part. There we go. So yeah, it picks up the shield and it rotates the shield with it. And then it comes around, lifts up the levers that it needs to lift up. I don't know if I should do this. Okay, we're good. See, it's lifting every lever in position. Now, for the most part, 1, 2, 3 depths is what we're used to in the US. I'm sure maybe y'all have 4 and 5 for some of the higher quality. We've got a spring down here that puts tension on that too. And I'm sure that on your better locks, you may even have 4, 5, 6 possibly. I don't know. What's y'all's deepest depth for the high security? We look up here, we see a Chubb high security. I'm just going to take one of these levers out to show you. It's got the lever on it. This one is marked 5, so that definitely has at least 5 depths. And we've got a brass. Instead of plastic, we've got this brass plate spacer. And our next one in line is a, what is that? We can't tell what that is. It's like trying to figure out a puzzle. But if we look at the levers, the 5, the heights are different from here and here. If we look at that one beside it, we can see the top projection sticks down further, which would mean you would need a probably shallower cut. Which, if we look at the key, no, that'd probably be a deeper cut for that first one. Oh, I'm gonna put this back together without the spacer plate in there. And again, we're gonna look at one more. So there is an obvious difference. However, and I know you guys use the metric system over there. The one question that I did have for my overseas guys is, when you are called, like it's, oh, let's look at this Chubb one more time. Look at these beautiful 5 lever keys. I really want to open this just for those beautiful keys. But this one is, you know, it's got this rating for insurance approved, 5 lever deadlock. Comes with a little face plate in the interior. So this one is got the rotating color as well. This one has a waved key. This would be kind of like the warding for the US, so it needs its particular little crook in the key to make work. And you can see the levers there. Now that is just a 3 lever, so not as high security as some of these other ones. We'll pop this one apart real quick because we were getting long in the video, longer than I wanted to spend. But if we take this off, we notice that it will be kind of a poppy because we have poppy because we've got that dead latch, or the latching mechanism that's almost always spring loaded. Oh, yep. And we see it has the same kind of levers as its cousin, the Leger over here. This one is unnamed, so we don't know the brand. However, the levers look exactly the same, so it may actually be from them as well. So the same setup. I'm gonna do a whole separate video on cleaning this bad boy up because I really like this one. And in the meantime, that is it. So the biggest difference, number one, US does not use bit keys any longer actively, whereas a lot of other places in the world may or do. Number two, very, very low security, 1 lever, maybe a thing to have, I need a cut in it, maybe some fancy warding. Other than that, one lever is almost always what we see, whereas the minimum over there seems to be 3. So that is the two big differences in US and non-US mortise bit key locks. So thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions, comments, or if you want to add any additional information over here, if you get called out to a job and you're a European locksmith, I know you go by millimeters, so do y'all have a standard millimeter, like ours is 2.5 and 2 3/4, one of the two. Most of these are like 2.5. Do y'all have, what's your common, 40, 50, 60 millimeter? And do you have to stock a bunch of different millimeters and styles? Like, what is y'all stock like? If you know of somebody that's done a video on that, please direct me to it in the comments. Otherwise, if you can explain it real briefly as to what your common measurements are, anybody watching this video overseas, feel free to chime in. Thanks for watching, guys. Y'all have a great one. We'll see you next video. As I was packing these up, I answered my own question. Seems to be 2.5, which is, if this is 44 millimeter, you will require 67 millimeter. And if this is 57, you will require 80 millimeter. So 2.5 and 3 inches seems to be the standard, if there is such a standard. I probably could have glanced during this video and seen that on the box and answered the question before I even asked it. So 2.5 and 3 inches is the answer to the question. But if you have any other insights, like over here in the US, back in the 60s, there was 1.5 inches. There are 2 inch. So what are y'all's oddballs? I guess I should amend the question. Let me know if y'all have an oddball size. It's not 2.5 or 3 inch if I would have looked and read.